So thank you so much to Southeastern and to all the, this has been such an amazing day. This is always such an amazing conference. I really appreciate it. And being in New Paltz, we were appreciating on the drive here that we get to come to this amazing conference like in 10 minutes from us. So we're especially lucky. We're going to talk to you a little bit about a project on SUNY New Paltz campus that included the library and the Samuel Dorsky Museum of Art. Before we get started, we're just going to introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Catherine or Katie, a Casey Wagemaker. I am a circulation and reference student assistant at the Sojourner Truth Library, and I'm an English and WGSS double major.
My name is Noelle Sullivan. I am the collections intern at the Samuel Dorsky Museum of Art, and I am a history major.
Hi, my name is Abby Rosenthal. I'm a circulation and reference student assistant at the Sojourner Truth Library, and I'm a major in English and history.
And my name is Madeline Beach. I'm the collection development and zine librarian at the Sojourner Truth Library, and I'm also
yes, they didn't have anything at on the 17th, and it's it. Yeah, so 8:45 because my appointment's 9:15. So the 17th, 8:45.
Anyway. Moving on. Oh, can you see us? We're in the, ooh, what happened here? Oh, it's back. Okay. Yay. Okay. So what is the pop-up swap? You know, libraries and museums, I think, and it's kind of lovely that we're following a museum presentation. You know, I think of us as cousins, right? Or good friends. We're both these sort of public collections with different levels of access. We're both spaces, I feel, of, you know, learning and research and ideas that are outside of like the classroom environment, you know, and thinking about our academic library context. I think on a college campus, right? The library and the museum are both these kind of not extracurricular, but extra classroom learning spaces. So they're not traditional classroom learning spaces. The pop-up swap, the idea was to create two simultaneous displays that one in the library that showcased the museum and one in the museum that showcased the library, right? So the library exhibit includes museum objects and interpretive text. It's on the library's main floor, so it's in a very public place right near the new books collection. And the museum objects that are going to be displayed in the kind of library pop-up within the library correspond to a current show over at the museum. So it's sort of connecting the library to the museum. And likewise, the Dorsky Museum exhibit will include library books and an accompanying introduction inside of an exhibit that inspired their selection, right? So books in the library that relate to a current museum exhibition. We struggled to come up with a name for what this was. We had a lot of like failed math metaphors. We were like, art times books squared. How can we get the math? Is there a division sign in there? Finally, we came up with art times books, really thinking that this would be a way to sort of amplify both of our collections working together. And here you can see the displays in action, and you'll see some more photos of displays that the interns and library staff members here have put together. We had very little money going into this, I should note. It's interesting too. The museum had money. I don't know. We didn't have money. So what we have is a cast-off cabinet that came from another building that they had used to display like student work, and they were like, we don't need this case anymore, we're going to throw it out. And we were like, please, we'll take it. So we got this cast off case, and then we printed this at the brightest possible signage we could produce to try to sort of call attention to it. The museum, on the other hand, they were buying sort of new seating and bookshelving for kind of the entrance to the gallery space, and they made this big, beautiful little book nook, which I thought was pretty great. So the background, this idea was developed by the Dorsky Museum director, Anna Conlin, who sends all of her best today. She can be here today, but she was the one who initially reached out to me and said, hey, I'd really like to do this. And she's been a great director of the museum, and that she's hugely collaborative. She really wants the museum to be kind of expansive and in a lot of places, and for people to feel like the museum is theirs. So I thought that was you know, a really wonderful idea that she had. And the first pop-up swap ran in the fall of 2023 in conjunction with Purple Haze. And you'll hear more about that from our other presenters. So just to talk a little bit about kind of the why, when Anna and I started talking about what this project could mean, what our hopes were, what kind of outcomes we'd like to see. You know, I've talked a little bit about how we thought this would increase reach and exposure to both of our collections. We also thought it would provide real world vocational experience for students who are interested in museum studies and in library science. And we do see a good number of students who come through as staff members at the library. That's the side I have more experience with, going on to study library science and to become librarians. I think we also hoped it would enhance kind of the way visitors and patrons experience the objects by bringing student perspectives to museum objects and to collections. And I know on the library side, you know, when we do information literacy instruction, we talk a lot about how authority is constructed and contextual, right? And we talk a lot about, you know, who gets to tell what stories and who gets to provide the framework for understanding, you know, the objects in front of us, or the knowledge that we've cataloged and put on the shelves. So I think it's meaningful to us to bring in, you know, student curatorial and library perspectives and center those views. So now I'm going to turn it over to the students who put together these displays and exhibits, and they'll talk a little bit. Yeah.
Alrighty, I'm up first. So I was the librarian, the library half of the Purple Haze book display. And so my goal with this was to largely pick books that covered a broad area of what the art display was on, but also aim towards like specifics for artists and other things that would provide general information, but also pathways of additional like research and knowledge. And as I've been doing book displays with our library for a while, it's very, very fun. And so like my research was, I have it down to a science. And the like collection that I decided to do was heavily based on general topics, but we had a couple books that I had to like make sure I put in. So the Dorsky had already had a book called Altered States. It's from the Library of Santo Domingo from Harvard. So that was already purchased. And then they requested 1 or 2 books about a specific artist that was part of the collection. Yeah. Some challenges and some just interesting things that I came across with. One of the biggest issues that I had was scheduling. So I got this project at the end of spring 2023. So that was going into like my summer, which wasn't a huge issue. But then I went away for a whole month to like I was traveling. And so making sure that I had like constant communication of like, this is what I'm researching. Is this going to fit with like the artists you have? Having that like constant contact was a little difficult with all of us scattered. The other thing that was an issue was at the beginning, I didn't have any real specifics about what the art was going to be, or not necessarily topic, but like, was it going to be just painting, sculptures? What are we talking about in like creative aspects, and who the artists actually were? I did not get any of that until starting a little bit later in the following fall when the display was supposed to be going up. And then the last thing that I was having trouble with was like purchasing books. Again, we didn't have necessarily the biggest budget. So there were a handful of things that wouldn't work because they were too expensive, or there was one that I really wanted to, Blotter, the one that I had in the presentation, that I didn't realize wasn't being published until earlier, like this year, I think, but like after my display would have gone up. And then the other thing was the Nib, which is a very, very cool thing. It's technically a magazine, but it's a collection of comics that are commissioned and drawn on a certain topic. And so they had a drug edition. Unfortunately, the library doesn't usually buy like one set magazines. Luckily, the Dorsky was available, and they offered to buy it for our collection, which was really, really nice. So yeah. Alrighty, I will hand it off then.
Hi guys. These are some pictures of my display in the library. On the left, you see this photograph of Herbert Huncke, which I will talk about in a second. And then the right, you get like a big picture view of what it looks like in the library once it was all set up with the labels and everything. So yeah, my mini exhibit was in relation to Purple Haze. Purple Haze sort of explored the representation of drugs in the media and in public imagination across North and South America. I had to use the Hudson Valley Visual Arts Collection Consortium database to find pieces in the museum that we already had access to that I could then use to promote the exhibit in the library. I was familiar with this database already. I used Content DM at the museum to input all of our pieces into the database so anyone can have access to them. There were some difficulties. I didn't really have much luck in the beginning finding pieces in our permanent collection that had like an explicit drug subject. So I started like keyword searching in the database, terms like drugs, substances, addiction, and I wasn't really getting anywhere. So I turned to my colleagues, the collections volunteer Susan Shaw suggested that I use like broader terms. So psychedelia, counterculture, spirituality. And that's where I found the Herbert Huncke piece that I showed earlier. That really kind of started my journey to making my display about these Beat Generation authors and poets, which I thought related nicely to the exhibit because they are some of the founding figures of the counterculture movement. And I know that a lot of my peers in high school read Allen Ginsberg. So I thought it would be a nice way to like draw people into the exhibit and just like kind of involve the library goers and try to bring them to the museum. Going back to the original piece that I found, the piece on the left, this is a picture of Herbert Huncke, who was an American author who never reached much commercial success with his writings, but he did act as a literary guide to Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac and William Burroughs. He spent most of his life in the street, hustling, writing, experimenting with drugs, and this photo acted as the impetus for the theme of this display. I just thought the photo itself was really interesting, like the denim work shirt and the Coca-Cola in hand I thought was like very Americana, so I thought that was a really good piece to include in the display. And yeah, so I think that the overall theme of my display tied in nicely with the exhibit because, again, my peers and we had a lot of experience in high school learning about Allen Ginsberg. So yeah, I think it all came along nicely.
Hi. So yeah, I started working on this collection in fall 2023 for an exhibit that would be going up in spring 2024. It opened at the end of January. It's still currently up. I think it's running through May. So you can all go to the Dorsky Museum at SUNY New Paltz and go check it out. And you can see my little book display on the side too. So the collection is called Global Connections, and it's about 4 artists living in New York during the 1920s. And so it's sort of exploring like multiculturalism, race, and depictions of race. And it focuses on 4 artists, Isami Doi, Winold Rice, Miguel Covarrubias, and Aaron Douglas. So I was specifically trying to find a lot of books that would reflect like 1920s culture and art movements. I also really wanted to highlight some books that were like focused on the artists themselves because I want to give people like more context for the artists' like lives and how they sort of saw themselves and their art moving. So I was specifically looking through, look and see on this display that I have a couple books on like on Winnowed Rice. One of the books, a couple books didn't have covers on exact covers on them, but there was one I know specifically about like Miguel Covarrubias's caricatures, which was his did a lot with like Mexican caricatures and his style. So I had some trouble actually finding specifically about Asami Doi. I couldn't find like any books or like specifically about him, but he was a Japanese man living in Hawaii and did a lot of work talking about like with like the Hawaiian people and their culture. And so I found a book that was called Encounters with Paradise, and it's specifically about like outside views on Hawaii and Hawaiian culture. And I thought that that was sort of in lieu of finding a book specifically about Asami Doi, still something that kind of highlights a theme of him and his work. And that's sort of where I was sort of had some trouble with, especially because I was also doing this on a pretty like scaled down time frame. I think we did this in like a month maybe. And it was like about in the middle of the semester, I was starting to get work done on my thesis, which was me starting the next semester. And I was also working just being as generally a student and my job at the library. So, and Madeline also like, she's like doing a ton of stuff for her job. And so we were just trying to figure out like scheduling wise, when's good times to meet, when's good times to like talk. Like I went and talked to some people at the Dorsky so I can figure out like what exactly their project is actually about. And it was really cool to be able to meet everyone there because I didn't know very much behind the scenes or what it took to really like create a collection, but this was a really awesome opportunity. And so thank you so much, Madeline, for tapping me for this.
Thank you all. Yeah, I mean, I guess another thing I would say, as a librarian, it's been such a joy to get to work with you all on this project and see your ideas come together. And yeah, I would echo that, you know, in terms of like the lessons learned, I feel like we're still learning this lesson, even though we're now in our fourth semester. Every semester we do this, it's really rushed. And I think it just has to do with what the schedule that the library is on versus the schedule at the museum, and making sure like everything gets to everyone. A lot of people touch all of the things we do, right? So the museum curators and the preparator, and there's just a lot of people involved, a lot of moving parts. And on the book side, one interesting moving part that we've sort of learned is like, you know, we needed a location code for these books. We needed to say where these books were. So these books now in the catalog have this location code, Dorsky pop-up swap or something like that. And I think it produces problems for ILL. I don't know. This is what I hear. ILL is like, this is confusing and people are still requesting these books and they're in a museum, so we can't get them. So, you know, we're still finessing that. But I think in conclusion, I think it's been a valuable practicum, or it seems it has. I mean, it's produced incredible work from students, which we all really appreciate. In the future, I think it would be great to collect some data on how these exhibits impact users. And that's something we haven't had a chance to do yet, but that we hope to. So I think that's it. If there are any questions. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah.
So are these student curators, is this part of their jobs? Are they paid to do this, or is it credit, or how does that work?
So, I mean, yeah, I was gonna say this is not like, it's not a paid job, or I mean, we do have paid jobs, like both Katie and I work at our Sojourner Truth Library as student assistant. So we're both paid for that. And this is sort of just like an extra piece we can kind of do on that. And so like we were doing a lot of it, like sometimes was on our shifts and stuff like that, you know, if it's slow at the desk, like we're not really doing anything, we can kind of like look through the books and figure out like what kind of stuff we want to get, because no one's really coming up and asking us anything at that time. So it's something really cool I can put on my resume and say that like I have really good experience being able to like say like, yeah, I curated like a little book collection.
We did get permission to put some paid shifts on for like meetings.
Oh,
So
yeah,
we did that a few
meeting,
times. We were able to like add to some shifts. So that was good. I don't know how in the museum, how does it work?
Yeah, no, my position at the museum is not paid, but I did this, I worked worked on most of the display over the summer. So I was just working and didn't have any like other academic responsibilities.
Good question.